data is sometimes horrendously wrong. And so you can look at the data and get insights, but you really have to trust that human intuition. You really have to talk to customers, because customers ultimately know what the best products are for them.
We gaan door naar de volgende spreker, Ebi Atawodi. Heel goed, thumbs up. Ze gaat haar talk in het Engels doen, maar ik geef haar aankondiging in het Nederlands. Ze is de Head of Global Payments van Uber. Ze was hiervoor de General Manager van West-Afrika in Uber. Dus ze heeft al een enorme cv. En daarnaast was ze ook nog eens full-stack engineer. En leidde ze ook nog eens ongeveer de bekendste literatuurprijs in Afrika. Ze heeft van alles gedaan. En ze gaat ons eigenlijk vertellen over alle lessen die ze in haar carrière heeft opgedaan. Van het wel of niet je gut volgen. Het wel of niet vertrouwen van data. En dat je soms misschien gewoon lekker moet toegeven dat je het ook wel eens fout kan hebben. Dus ik ben heel erg benieuwd. Stel er vooral lekker veel vragen. En Abby, floor is yours.
So that's a bit of a tough act to follow. I have a bunch of Slido questions for the dancers. So my name's Ebi Atawodi. Yuki's done a fantastic job of introducing, so I'm just going to go right to it. And what I'm going to be talking about today are some lessons in my journey. So I'm currently product manager at Uber, leading a payments team in Amsterdam. About 100 folks from all over the world trying to solve payment challenges. And I initially started off as a full-stack engineer, so I feel like I've been at the back of the house and the front of the house, and somewhere in the middle now. And then really what I'm focusing on is my journey from operations at Uber, so the last sort of 4 years of my life, and then moving into product, and the lessons that I learned along the way. And actually what you'll find is, well, what I found, they're actually the same insights. So how many people in the room have actually used an Uber? Ah. Nice. Lekker. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the story. For those of you who didn't have your hands up, icebreaker conversation at the end during the happy hour. Ask what is Uber, and I promise you'll be amazed. Travis and Garrett, our two founders, were in Paris, a cold winter evening, and they couldn't find a taxi. Now, in places where bicycles aren't everywhere, finding a taxi can sometimes be very painful. And they said, it's got to be better than this. We have phones in our hands. There's got to be a better way of doing this. And that's where the vision came from. Transportation is reliable as running water. And you'll find out in a second why I'm smiling about this vision. So when I joined Uber in 2014, we had about 100 cities. And 2016, we actually launched the 400 city. That was one of my cities in West Africa. And today we have over 600. And today what you have is 15 million trips around the world. That's about 1 million shy of the population of the Netherlands. So every day, about the population of the Netherlands are being connected in this sort of culmination of product, operations, and customer, and this human interaction that comes together. And these are the lessons I'm going to go through. So there are 5 lessons in total. There's a bit of a theme here, 5, 5, 5, HighFive. I promise we didn't talk, just, you know, les grands esprits, as the French say. So the sausage making. So we had this vision, and it was reliable transportation. Transportation as reliable as running water. Lagos is the first market where I started in, 21 million people. Lagos is actually one of the top economies in Africa, so the state of Lagos is actually larger than some countries in Africa. It seems like, I mean, this is going to be a walk in the park, right? You know, people need to move around, you have lots of traffic. You already know that this is not going to go exactly as it was planned. And with all of these customers, these are not stock photos, they're actually real customers, real drivers, real riders, female drivers as well, which is always nice to see. And I'm just going to play a quick video. and if you turn the volume down a little bit. And it was really, each of the lines on this video are actual trips happening. So this was in 2015. And then in 2016, we look at this again, and those lines are actually covering the entire city. And for each of those, what you're saying is you've got a customer being connected with a partner, because we're a technology company, a car that's on the road, to realize that vision of transportation as reliable as running water. And I'm pausing for effect. But in a country where running water is not reliable, that vision in itself doesn't exactly scale globally. So we kind of just optimize for reliable transportation everywhere and for everyone. And what that means is we started off small office. I could barely move my computer to the back, otherwise it would touch the other person. And we needed to get these cars on the road. And the international playbook of Uber, 100 cities at the time, was you go out, you go to airports, you go to hotels, and you pitch this vision of Uber to someone and say, well, you can now earn and get on the road, right? I remember walking in to one of the hotels, T-shirt, hustling, and trying to pitch this to a taxi driver at the time. And he said to me, you mean you want me to use a phone and touch it to receive my business? It looked like this crazy idea in a country where people do not, a lot of people have never actually used a touchscreen phone, have never used the internet. And we just thought, yeah, it's been in 100 cities, so just go, take the playbook. Didn't work. So what we found out, we had to go to the drawing board with all of 15 cars on the road at the time, 50, I think, and try to figure out where we get these cars from. And so we said, well, where are all the cars? They're mostly parked outside when people are in their offices. So okay, let's figure out a way to get, convince people to put their cars on the road and make some money. And so we would go into offices, we would book a meeting room, that's actually a conference room in an office, and convince someone to bring all their colleagues in and say, well, listen, you could go get all the licensing and everything and earn some money. And that's how we started scaling the business. And on the next slide, it got to a point where we couldn't actually fit the number of people sending, so they would create a job, right? Because you'd hire someone, you would be working, and your car would be working and earning money for you. And it got to a point where the people they would send in actually went past our office, and we were booking hotel rooms to make that happen. So that brings me to my very first story, and I spent a bit of time on this one, but it's a really important one. The gap between the idea, the vision, and the tactics is really where the magic lies. It's the sausage making, the soy-based sausage making. and really, this is the sort of the theme that you will see along the way. Second story is necessities. So we thought about this global product, cashless payments, and we said it will be magical when it's seamless and it's cashless. So in 2016, when Thijs over here, who was actually PMing Cash, my colleague, came and said, well, they said, let's launch Cash in Nigeria. I actually put together an entire deck, and I said, over my dead body, would they launch Cash? And I will quit if they veto it. Well, this brings me to my next story. Be prepared to eat your words, because it's 2018, Cash was launched, I'm not dead, and I didn't quit. And so we launched Cash in the market, and at the time, actually, the central bank had blocked international transactions. So out of this necessity, the same person saying Cash would never work, I put together a deck, a presentation saying, actually, let's speed up the Cash in Nigeria, because business had gone from that to that, because card payments were not working. And so when we launched Cash in 2016, you actually see that in a lot of markets, and this is all around the world, the black line are new customers signing up with a digital payment method. And the green line are new customers signing up with Cash. And what we're essentially saying is that if we didn't launch Cash, all of these customers would never experience that reliable transportation. It would be for some people in some places, not everywhere and for everyone. So sometimes you think you understand the customer, but really pushing and challenging yourself and being okay with being wrong. Devil in the details, that's the third story. So we launched Cash, we unlocked payments, we unlocked cars on the road, and essentially what happens is you've got a two-sided marketplace, so you need to stimulate, you have to keep stimulating both sides. So people on the, you had customers, and we had sort of saturated the market, so you started seeing a flat line, which in startup world is like, oh my God, because it's always the hockey sticks, right? So we said, well, what's the problem? And we found out that people thought Uber was expensive, international brand, American brand. So actually the one thing that should be working to our advantage was actually doing the opposite. People thought it was expensive. Actually, Uber is quite affordable. So what we did was we pitched a 50% campaign. And the idea there was we would show the price at 50% because you're going to multiply it by 2 and you'll figure out what the normal price is. And in a way, we've told you it's affordable without actually saying that. And so we launched the campaign. It was to the letter, clinical precision, the marketing, the radio campaign, everything. And I'm sure you all know this is going to go fantastically wrong. Which brings me to my next lesson. And I think someone said this earlier. Success is what happens after multiple failures. Or as Thomas Edison put it quite nicely, I've learned 10,000 ways how not to do it, right? And so what happened was we were seeing customers sort of growing during this promo period. We launched it on Wednesday. We wanted to maximize the weekend. And then what happened is the drivers on the road just started going the other way. We're like, what's going on? We'd brought drivers together at the beginning. They'd said it was a great idea. What's going on? We looked at the data. We couldn't see anything. So we picked up the phone and just started calling random partners, drivers. And they basically said, well, hey, remember how I talked about that great thing, cash? Okay, well, a lot of drivers started relying on the cash in their pockets to buy petrol, right? And so if you're going to discount my trips and then give me that money in digital payments on Monday, then I have to wait till Monday to get my money. And so they just, when the petrol ran out, they stopped. And so we had to, nobody thought about this, no one. And we're like, oh, of course. And so we called petrol stations, hustle again, and we convinced a few petrol stations to sell petrol to our partners, and then they would pay back on Monday. And that's how we got the promo going. But you can plan to precision, but you learn from these mistakes. And they actually help you go further. And actually on the product side, we launched this product about 2 years ago, the Uber driver card. And one of the things that we included in the driver card is the ability to get $100 overdraft on the card and use it to actually buy petrol, or when your tire goes down. And you have this, you basically keep people on the road when they want to be on the road. And so that insight actually led to this product, which is it has one of the biggest NPS scores we've seen. My second to the last story, and I know I'm totally over time, human intuition. So again, same story. Drivers would either get their money in cash or we would send them the money every week. And we said, well, okay, we need to do this a bit more instantaneously. So we launched this product called Instant Pay that allowed a driver see what they were earning. You probably have never seen the side of the app. This is the driver side. And they would hit cash out and get their money in their bank account when they wanted it. And then we ran an experiment, treatment control group. We were looking at the performance of this. And what actually happened was, in some markets where there was cash, we saw cash growing exponentially, and people just weren't using the product. So we said, well, okay, we'll launch it in the markets where we see all the stats are telling us this is right, and we'll switch it off in the markets where it just doesn't seem to be adding any value. Last year, a few of us went to Jakarta, talking to drivers, because it's important to talk to your customers. And drivers started bringing up Instant Pay. Jakarta was one of the markets where we had switched off Instant Pay. And they said, oh, actually, the reason I have a lot of cash trips is when I start running out of money, I call the rider when they request, and I say, hey, you're going to pay by card or cash? And if they say card, I cancel. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then you're going to have more cash trips. Why are they doing this? Well, yeah, because when I hit Instant Pay, it was taking 48 hours, because the banks in that country take 48 hours to process, and I need my money immediately. And, well, again, human intuition, which is the fourth lesson. Data is sometimes horrendously wrong. And so you can look at the data and get insights, but you really have to trust that human intuition. You really have to talk to customers, because customers ultimately know what the best products are for them. And on the product side, when we were launching the new driver app, we actually had a beta group of 500 drivers around the world who got the product from day one. with all the bugs and all the issues, and they basically helped us push the product to something that's extremely magical now. And so this is the fourth lesson. My fifth and final lesson, Yuki's giving me, my fifth and final lesson is crazy people actually change the world. People who actually dare to change the world actually do. And this is not a story from me at all, but this is a story that I've held true to myself during my career, especially my time at Uber. So the person you see on the screen is Frederick Tudor, otherwise known as the Boston Ice King. And you're probably wondering why he's called the Boston Ice King. In the 1800s, he was about 23, borrowed about $4,000, and had this crazy idea to cut out ice and ship it to hot countries. This is when there were no refrigerators, no preservation. And what used to happen was the rich people in Boston would have in wells, they would take ice, put them in the wells, and preserve them from the winter months, the summer months, so they could make cold drinks in summer, right? Fantastic idea. And he said, oh my goodness, I'm actually going to ship this to hot countries. So he went, ice is free, you just need the labor to get it out there and ship it. He shipped the ice over to Martinique, and you can all imagine what happened. Most of it melted. People thought he was crazy. As a matter of fact, he lost so much money that he was in debtor's prison. You would think that that would talk him out of it. He tried again. He shipped more ice to Cuba. And this time the ice arrived, but he still didn't make enough money. He did it third time, fourth time. Finally, he figured out that covering the ice in sawdust, which is basically the chippings you get from wood, free, actually covered the ice and protected it. He also figured out that the trick was making sure that when the ice arrived at its destination, you actually had a place to store the ice. So they started building these ice houses. And you can still find these today in Caribbean and in India. So he started shipping ice to Calcutta. And finally, he made a profit of about $220,000, which is about $4 million today. He persevered. And this is, by the way, this is actually a quote from when the ship arrived in Martinique. No joke, a vessel has cleared at the custom house for Martinique with a cargo of ice. We hope this will not prove a slippery speculation. And so what happened was at the top here, this is what you call an ice box. People would buy these ice cubes and put them at the top of the ice box, and the cold air would drop and it would preserve your food. Recognize that flag? About the same time, there was something called the spice trade, of which the Netherlands was actually quite a big participant of the spice trade. And the spice trade started also to dwindle for many other reasons. But one of the key reasons was people used to use spice to preserve their food because they thought it tasted better when it went off. It didn't actually preserve food. It just tasted better and smelled better. And over that time, the ice boxes were picking up. And so you had a spice trade that almost disappeared overnight. And I don't know if you want to guess how many people in the spice trade actually pivoted and said, well, hold on, there's this new thing, ice boxes, like an innovation center. Let's move and go and do ice. Zero. So, final lesson. How do you make fine wood? It's rough. You take sandpaper. There's a lot of friction and grit. It's painful. It's a long process. But if you persevere, you will succeed, right? And that's with your teams, with your ideas. That's how you make beautiful things. You go through this rough friction and grit. And so those are my 5 lessons. 1, magic making isn't so magical. 2, be prepared to eat your words and be vulnerable when you do that. The devil is really in the details. Data is sometimes wrong, and friction, grit, repeat. Thank you. Also 5.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's Dutch, English, French, Nigerian language, and Ghanaian, because there were a lot of Dutch people in Ghana once upon a time.
Nice. Thank you very much. One of the most upvoted questions is, what attracted you in working at Uber? Because you had a career as a full-stack engineer, you worked on a literature prize. What made you switch?
Ooh, I'm still asking myself that question. But in 2014, I basically quit. And I started off as an engineer, looking at lines of code. And I wanted to get closer and closer to people, to customers to actually, because what would happen is you'd get the idea and you just go off and code it. I wanted to be close to the customer. So along my career, did a design course at Parsons, moved on. I'm passionate about reading. And I sort of just, I feel like in life, if you focus on the now and execute right now, the next step it comes to you. And so in 2014, after doing all of this, I said, I'm going to take some time out, very similar to you, Marcia, and I am going to go diving. And
Because that's what you do.
because I love diving. And, I walked into this conference and I bumped into what we called launchers at the time. These are the people who we send into a market when there's nothing and they bootstrap the market. And he said, you should be our GM. We were just talking. He said, you should be. I was like, no, I'm done with this corporate life. I was like, no, it's a startup. Yeah, sure, 100 cities. And he persisted, like Frederick Tudor. And I applied, and it's
But was there
probably
one thing he said that that
Absolutely.
convinced you?
It is the coming together of technology, people, and the impact that you make in the world. So everything I've done in my life, I always say it must impact at least 2 generations, because then you will think about it in a sustainable way. If it's educating people or empowering people, so the Literature Prize, pretty much everything you look at, it has that same pattern. And that was it. It's, talking to drivers and saying, I haven't had a job for days, and I found Uber, and now I can put food on the table. Now I feel like a man. One driver actually said that, Or I was, in a part of Nigeria where there was Boko Haram, and I fled to Lagos, and I didn't need to learn the local language because I could just click the button and go. And you hear these stories, and it makes you come to work every day. It makes you feel you're actually changing the fabric of cities. You're actually changing people's lives.
So making an impact, that's like the red line through
Yes.
everything you do.
Yeah.
And another question, which has maybe not much to do with your personal background, but I'm also curious about that, because you showed us that you solved a lot of stuff in the customer journey and also for the drivers. What is your current challenge?
Ooh, where to begin?
Well, the most challenging challenge.
So I think they're actually 2 things. I think one is, and this is probably what you're all facing, right? It's one of the biggest challenges is finding and building a really high performance team. It's very easy to put that on the back burner, to be swamped with meetings and emails and whatnot, to want to rush into interviews. It is the single most important thing that you do, the team that you have and growing that team. It's being present. It's making sure that you actually get people to move forward. So I think one of the biggest things as a business as a whole is we're growing very fast. And as you go fast, more things get on your plate. But I actually say invest 30 to 40% of your time in building your team. Right.
And what is the main ingredient for
building your team?
Building your team.
But the 2 parts of it.
Yeah, except for the people, of course.
Right. The people are. It is the people, right?
Yeah, but
Yes.
let me rephrase that question. What do you look for in people when they are about to join your team?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer the first question
Go
a little
for
bit
it, yeah.
in 2 parts. First, it's new people. And with new people, it's making sure that even when the person leaves the room, even if you're not going to hire them, they're like, oh my goodness, I really want to work for that business, right? And that is everything from being present. It's making sure that people understand what you're doing. It's making sure that you actually invest in bringing people on and actually selling them the vision of what you're doing. Now then there's the existing people on the team. Mm-hmm. And I think as a leader, one of the biggest things is this vulnerability. It's everybody feeling like, I trust everyone, I am learning, right? I am growing, and I'm making an impact. You want one of those at least, right? And people sometimes will trade impact for salaries because they're making a change. And so when you have that culture of, it's okay to be wrong, so we can challenge each other, we can go, this is a crazy idea. You actually move together faster, right? It's that friction again. So I think with the team, it's the building of the trust. It's making people feel comfortable with being vulnerable. And then also this culture of, I actually care about you, Yuki, and I actually want you to succeed, right? Yes. And how you make that happen. So I think that's probably the biggest one. The second biggest one, challenge generally, is how we solve the payments problems in the world. Payments are such an intricate part of how we live. And solving it in hundreds and hundreds of cities in over 80 countries is, I'm sure Abby will tell you, it's not the most straightforward thing. And so that's kind of the biggest thing for our team right now is making sure that payments, you don't even think about it. Or when you do think about it, there's this feeling of, there's this warm, fuzzy feeling in your stomach that, oh my goodness, this was amazing. Yeah.
Okay, well, some big challenges, but good ones, I think. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I hope next time, sorry. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, sure. I actually want to hear more about people and hiring, so I invite you next time to talk about that as well.
In Dutch.
In Dutch. Challenge accepted. Go for it. Thank you very much.